This is The Big Question with Dr. Ellie Gonzalez, brought to you by Good News Unlimited, tackling the big questions in a simple and positive way.
The big question is, what did Jesus wear? The Bible doesn't give us a neat physical description of what Jesus wore all in one place, but we can pretty much piece together his wardrobe. Jesus wore a mantle that was like a large shawl. It was a distinctively Jewish form of shawl that had tassels along the edge. Jesus would have used this to keep warm and also to put over his head when he was praying. This shawl was usually made of undyed wool. Jesus used sandals like everyone else. These were pretty basic and made of unprocessed leather. Jesus' main piece of clothing was a tunic, which for men went down to just below the knees. Only very rich men wore long tunics that went down to their ankles. In fact, Jesus specifically criticized men who wore long tunics and who receive honor from people who were impressed by their fine clothes, when in fact they had made their wealth by exploiting others. The unusual thing about the tunic that Jesus wore was that it was made up of one piece of cloth only. Most tunics were made of two pieces sewn at the shoulders and sides. Usually, one-piece tunics in first century Judea were only worn by children or worn by adults as thin undergarments. Only the very poor wore a one-piece tunic. A scholar named Celsus wrote a book about this new religion called Christianity. He was able to interview people who had heard the eyewitness stories about Jesus. The information that Celsus reported from his sources was that Jesus, and I quote, wandered about most shamefully in the sight of all, and that he obtained his means of livelihood in a disgraceful way, which meant that he did it by begging and by receiving donations. Now, as you might have picked up, Celsus was no friend of Christianity. He wrote his book to attack this new faith. The Christian author Origen wrote a systematic rebuttal of Celsus's book, but he never rejected those assertions about how Jesus dressed. So, from the perspective of respectable people, Jesus would have looked pretty rough, in keeping with the company that he usually kept, the poor and the outcasts of society. Like the religious leaders of the day said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" Jesus was always detached from material things, and he was always concerned for the poor. And how Jesus dressed was as much a part of his message as the words that he said. The message of Jesus challenged all the religious, social, economic, and political prejudices of his day. It was pretty radical, and it still is.
For more, contact goodnewsunlimited.com.